Hello and welcome to Spurs Kings TV. We are your host. I'm Marlon.
And I'm Ashmatic. And we've asked all of our lovely YouTubers in our space a few questions about Ange Postecoglou. And we want to know, how do you rate Ange's tenure so far, number one? And number two, do you think he'll be successful at Spurs?
I want to thank all the YouTubers that have come out and helped us with this video. Every single one that we asked said yes. And we can't thank you enough for just being in this video. And I just want to say, please, everybody, please like, subscribe, and comment. Comment on what you think as well your answer will be. But also, thank you to all the YouTubers who took part. Roll on the first one.
What's up, Spurs Kings TV? Marlon has asked me to do a video about Ange's tenure so far. Well, it's an interesting time to ask me that question because just after we've lost Ipswich and Palace, didn't ask me to do this after we beat Villa and Man City, did you, Marlon? You asked me to do this after we've just lost Ipswich. But I understand, international break, and look, there are big question marks at the moment with Ange Postecoglou, no doubt about it. I'm not going to sit here and deny that not all is well. And considering that we've started the season with 5 losses and 5 wins, coupled with the fact that since the Chelsea game last November, it's been 17 games, 17 losses as well. The narratives are all out there to suggest that Ange is definitely under a lot of pressure. And, you know, a lot of people suggesting he won't last till Christmas. A lot of people thinking he's out of his depth. But I'm of a different thinking. I think when I look at the team, I look at the way we play, I'm still kind of positive about the direction we're heading in. Obviously, I'm aware the results need to improve and we need to find consistency. But when we're at our best, we are an extremely good team and very, very difficult to play against. I think we've shown that this season with the amount of heavy wins we've had. Every time we win, we seem to win by a big margin. But we seem to be fluctuating week to week when it comes to really big performances. And then we don't show up for games like Palace and Ipswich, which is very, very frustrating. I think you can't just throw away the fact that he has developed a side that at their very best can blow any team away and are to play some really scintillating football. And I think that's very important when we're going through the hustle and bustle of the Premier League. That's something we can cling on to, and that's something that I think if we can just bring out this team on a more regular basis, we're going to win a lot more games than we lose. At the moment, that's not happening, and it's very frustrating. Is it because we're struggling to balance Europe and the other competitions with the Premier League like we didn't last season? I don't know if that's an excuse because we have been rotating, and as well, we didn't exactly do well last season without it. So I don't think we can use it as an excuse, but he has to find the right balance. I don't think it's a case of he's on his last legs yet or anything like that. You know, we're still going strong in the cups. We're only 3 points off third in the league. It's so tight. In a couple of games' time, things can look very different. You know, it could look different either way, but things can look very different with how tight the table is. So I think he's still got a bit of time on his side, but obviously we can't carry on results with as many wins and losses and expect that to be something that continues indefinitely, because then that will cost him his job. But when I look at his job, you know, his tenure so far, he's had a lot of work to do. He's had to completely rip up the squad. He's had to completely change the playing style. It's not like Arne Slot where he's come in and, you know, he's got a plug-and-play squad where Klopp already did the rebuild and just had to do that rebuild completely by himself. And, well, not by himself, but, you know, completely from scratch. And I think we're on our way there. I look at the squad and I see a lot of promising things, and I'm generally positive about the squad in my opinion. As much as I think we need more, I still think we've got a lot of good players there. So all is not lost in my opinion. I'm still positive about Ange. I think let's see where we are at Christmas and see what position we're in, and I think we'll take it from there. I don't think there's any need to panic. I don't think there's any need to think he should be gone. There's no one better alternative right now anyway. So that's my thoughts at the moment on Ange.
What's up, Marlon? Ash, thanks for having me on, guys. A pleasure to be on the great channel that is Spurs Kings TV. The question is, how do I rate Ange's tenure at Spurs so far, and do I think he's going to be a success at Spurs? Well, you caught me at a bad time, lads. You really did catch me at a bad time, because before the Ipswich game, I was very positive about Ange. I thought, you know, we were going in the right direction, and I would have been certain that the guy was going to be a success, is going to be a success at Spurs. But the Ipswich game has changed a lot for me, because it's just made me question him the most I've ever questioned him since being here. I think if you would have looked at pre-Brighton, I would have said that the games that we're dropping points in, you know, you could see some light at the end of the tunnel. You could see that there's something to go on. The football was good. Those games that we dropped points in, Newcastle, Leicester, even Arsenal to a certain extent, we deserve to get more out of the games. Now these worrying performances are coming in, second half at Brighton, Crystal Palace, and now the worst of the lot, Ipswich. It all depends how our form goes over the next in December, really. I think if he you know, goes on a bad run now, I really feel that Levy could pull the trigger, because if we go on a bad run now, I think we're going to slip behind badly. And we know what happens when we start slipping behind. Potentially, if we go out of the cup as well, Levy is going to wield that famous axe of his when top four looks like it's getting away from him. Having said that, I really like Ange. I really like the brand of football that he produces on the most part. But you can't get away from the fact that worrying performances and worrying traits are coming into this side now. I just got to hope, I got to pray. I'm clinging on to the fact that he galvanises the troops and we go again. I wouldn't be surprised if we get a result against City, but it's what happens after that, because when you look at the first half of the season, we've had favourable fixtures. We've lost 5 games already, guys. And if you want to look at just stone cold facts, barefaced facts and wins and losses ratio, after the Chelsea game up until I think it was the game before Ipswich, it was 17 wins, 17 losses. Now this season it's 5 wins, 5 losses. So he's got to get some consistency in this side. And if he doesn't in the space of December, then I really feel that Levy's going to do something stupid. And I feel it will be stupid to sack Ange, because I think, for whatever you want to say about these performances, I do feel like for the most part we have been playing well this season. Yes, worrying traits have started to come in, but I can back Ange to put that right, even if he does go through a dodgy period in December. So even if we do go on a losing run or some bad results start to creep in December on a regular basis, I do want to stick with it. And if we do stick with it, I think there's so much value in sticking with the project. We've seen it before. Klopp in his early years at Liverpool, you know, it wasn't going right. We stuck with it. They stuck with it. Poch was on the verge of getting sacked. We stuck with it. That free kick of Harry Kane saved them at Aston Villa. Arteta, 2 8th place finishes, a 5th finish. They stuck with it. So I really want to see us stick with it. But I've just got this feeling inside me that Ange ain't going to last this season. I've really got a horrible feeling about it. So I hope I'm wrong. Look, I was asked the exact same question before the Ipswich game, directly before the Ipswich game, and I said that Ange is doing a great job and he will win a trophy this year. So I'm going to stick with that. I do think Ange is doing a good job, and if we stick with him, silverware is coming. So let's just hope we stick with him, guys, because it's not good, man. If we sack him, we're just stuck in this endless loop, sacking managers, hiring managers every 18 months. Manager bounce, players throwing him under the bus, Levy throwing him under the bus, and then we start again. So I feel like we have to stick with him. I don't think we got a choice. I really don't. So look, that's my 2 cents on it. Do I think Ange will be a success at Spurs? I think it very much relies on how Spurs do over the next month. But let's hope we do, guys. Come on, you Spurs.
Hi there, guys. Ricky Sachs here from The Last Word on Spurs. Hope everyone is well. Shout out to the boys over at the Spurs Kings, my boys Miles and Ash. Boys, thank you so much as always for having me on the show. And I'm here to give you a bit of an overview, my feelings about Ange Postecoglou's tenure at Spurs so far. Well, that question, tenure so far, I think it's fair to say that at the moment there's a definitive split in terms of what many feel about Ange Postecoglou and where Spurs are in their journey under the man. Look, we are in the midst of what you've got to say is a difficult period right now, the win-loss nature. Yes, admittedly, Spurs are only 3 points off the current top four. They're only 3 points off third. But then again, I think as many are aware of the fact, when you start the season, the nature we have had, I think one more point than what Nuno was sacked for at the time, that's going to come with pressure. And I feel like at the moment with Tottenham, Ange is still trying to build the team he wants to build. But, this will ultimately come down to the word patience. How much patience do the fans have? How much patience does Daniel Levy and Enoch have? And look, don't get me wrong, I think in his tenure, there's seen some dizzying highs of really good results, but there's also seen some really, really bad results, as we know just from the last few weeks, to be giving Ipswich and Palace, respectively, their first win of the season is unacceptable and not good enough. And unfortunately, with that will come pressure. I think the crazy thing for fans to get their head around is that when Ange ball Spurs have won, it's been great. This season, look at the nature of the wins. Man United, West Ham, Everton, they've dominated the games they've won in, but then they've been absolutely appalling in the games they've lost, which raises questions to whether are the players motivated? Are they listening to Ange Postecoglou? I made that point after Ipswich where I just don't think Ange would have sent them out to be that bad. So that does worry me. I think, again, you look at the transfer windows under Ange, whilst there has been some decent signings, I think we always leave every window, not just under Ange, but under Enoch's tenure, always wanting and needing more. And this is going to be quite simply the case of, will Ange Postecoglou get the tools from the current hierarchy to be able to do the job? I think many, as you know, are aware, and if you listen and watch last one on Spurs, I make my points very, very clear that I don't think we've given any manager necessarily in the last 20 years the actual tools to be able to do the job. To be fair, the only one really, with all due respect, that somehow was fighting above his weight and punching above his weight, despite, you'd again say, not really given the most amount of tools to do the job, was Maurizio Pochettino. And even under him, Spurs still didn't win a trophy, but they had a period of where they were dominating the Premier League when it comes to, the style of football, the way in which they approach teams. And I think the key is that many fans are absolutely craving to get back a Tottenham that is 100% dominant, can control games and can win them with style. And my worry about that is, if I'm going to be honest with you, I just don't feel the current hierarchy are going to be able to give Ange Postecoglou the tools so he can be successful at the club, which is really hard. I don't want to hear it, I don't want to say it, but I feel that's the case. And it's just, difficult right now, I think, as a fan, because we approach another international break, as you guys know, and how many of these have we had where we just simply can't get results before them, which makes it even harder than going into it and stomaching it for 2 weeks coming back. But look, reality is now, I always say that kind of November and December, these are heading towards the business periods of the season where you've got to get results. It's what shapes the rest of the season. So when Spurs do come back, they're playing Man City, who've lost 4 on the bounce. No, I don't want to hear Dr. Tottenham, but Tottenham Hotspur need to get their season back on track, and Ange Postecoglou needs to get results fast. So it's going to be an interesting period in these next 2, 3, 4 weeks. Look, I'm always very honest when I talk about Tottenham and when I talk about the manager and the players. I don't see a benefit right now of sacking Ange Postecoglou. I don't really see who's out there right now that's going to come in and make an immediate difference to the squad. At the same time, I couldn't really argue if Spurs did pull the trigger because the results have not been good enough. But like I've said, pretty much throughout this short clip, that the one common denominator that has remained the same at Tottenham in the last 20 years is the hierarchy, is the ownership, and this growing feeling, voice of need of investment, which the club have also confirmed is the case. Spurs do need that investment to push the club on. So, as always at Tottenham, it's going to be fascinating for the right and the wrong reasons probably. And we need to, I think, in these next few weeks, few months, be able to answer that question, what do Tottenham Hotspur want to be? I think that's a question that's on everybody's mind. What do Spurs want to be? You look at their business, you look at the manager that comes out and says he would like Tottenham to win the league. Let's be real about it. We're 12 points off the league at the moment. You look at our squad, we're not going to win the Premier League this season. We've got a great opportunity in the cup competitions. And many have said, because we're such an inconsistent team, we can maybe go away in a cup. I will make that point that I still feel in cup competitions, you've got to be tactically astute. And whilst Ange has made, I would say, subs this season that have changed games in his favour, my worry would be you look at the likes of an Ipswich and a Palace, and one bad day at the office like that you are out of a cup. So it's a big next few weeks in store for Ange Postecoglou. For us fans, I would like to see some unity amongst the fan base, us sticking together. No, it's difficult times out there. But if I'm going to rate his tenure so far out of 10, I probably would give it... I mean, can I give it above a 5? And the reason why I ask can I give it above a 5 is that we're not where we want to be. He's not where he wants us to be. And it's a work in progress, if you want to use that word progress, which I know is hard when you have seen us just lose at home to newly promoted Ipswich. So very hard to give him above a 5, I'm going to be honest with you at the moment, given what I'm seeing and given the way in which we fell short towards the end of last season when you consider the start we've had. So, look, there's different camps where everyone stands on the manager. I don't really want to get involved in that because I just call things as I see them in terms of the results and the performances. All I know is it needs to improve, and it needs to improve fast because due to the nature of our form at the moment, I think if you take from that Chelsea game of last season until now, we're averaging 56 points. 56 points does not get you Champions League football. It may not even get you Europa League football. But again, context of the table, we're only 3 points off third, but our form is so erratic. So I think I would have to give him, at the moment, the halfway grade of a mark of 5 out of 10. Many might say I'm being too generous. Many might say I'm being harsh, but I can't really give him anything above that in my mind because he's not doing the job that I want him to do. But again, I acknowledge it's not all of his fault. He's not got the players maybe he wants. And this is, again, a work in progress. So I'm sure I'll be back with you guys very soon. And Ash and Miles will be coming on to Last One on Spurs to give their thoughts on it. So I would say 5 out of 10. Definitely room for improvement. And let's just keep strong, guys, because I do have a feeling it's going to be a testing period over the next couple of months. And we need to stick together. Thank you so much. Last One on Spurs. Ricky Sachs here. Speak to you guys soon.
Marlon Sava here from Football Heritage TV. I'll keep this short and sweet. I think there's going to be no surprises from me. Ange Postecoglou, for me, I've found it very mediocre. I've never known a manager have so many average performances, so many defeats, and still absolutely loved. I'm one of those fans. I don't actually think the football is as great as everyone else does. We have some good moments in games. We have some good 15-minute patches like we did against Aston Villa and West Ham. But in general, for me, I think that it's been very underwhelming. I think we're seeing why this manager hasn't managed in a top league before. Poor substitutions. I mean, listen, I'm not going to reel off loads of stats, but the number of defeats is just shocking. And the form just isn't getting any better. Again, people are going to hate me saying this, but factually, the form has been very poor when you collaborate it all together over a year. Would I sack him? Look, I'm not his biggest fan. If Spurs change manager right now, I really wouldn't care. Should we sack him? Who's Levy going to bring in? I don't know. People say just get behind him. I just don't trust him. I am not one of these fans who thinks there's a process. Whenever I ask somebody what the process is, no one can actually tell me. Look, he's done okay in times. Look, go on, win a cup, shut me up, fine. That's what we want. But for me, I'm a little bit disappointed by him overall. Listen, great channel, Spurs Kings, great channel. I just wish we had a great manager. Take care, man.
Yes, Marlon and Ashmatic and the Spurs Kings TV fan them. The boys have reached out to me and asked for my opinion on how Postecoglou has gone on at Tottenham so far and where I'm at with the project. So I'll take you back to when Postecoglou first arrived here. We were a club that internally was an absolute mess. We were just floating in the wind. We had no direction and no leadership, and that shows with the high turnover of managers before Postecoglou got here. Jose Mourinho, Ryan Mason, Nuno, Conte, and Stellini. 5 managers in as many years is not good enough. When we're talking about the want to win trophies as a fan base, we have to realize that stability in the dugout is what gets you to winning trophies, not changing a manager every 14 to 16 months. And I'm also of the opinion, looking at Postecoglou's tenure, Jose's tenure, Conte's tenure, that 14 to 16 months is not long enough in the Spurs job to be able to change everything they need to internally while also getting Daniel Levy to continue to back the project. Also, that brings me on to the style of play when he arrived. Many fans were fed up with the defensive, vulgar football that was on display. They wanted to get back to attacking football. They want to get back to the Spurs way. And to a large degree, I think Postecoglou has brought that in terms of we play possession-based football. We play a lot of our football in the opposition's half, which is what many Spurs fans want to see. However, has he improved us defensively from where we were? And I would argue, no, I don't think he has. And I do think that's one big flaw of his and his system, and one area that he really needs to tighten up on, which would actually help him. Because instead of losing games and winning games, if we don't win, we can put draws on the board, and therefore there's not as many conversations around the inconsistency. But also, he had to change the goalkeeper for the first time in a decade. He also had to integrate a new left side of the back four, which was a massive problem under previous managers. And also, he's the first manager that had to deal without someone like Harry Kane, who stepped up in big moments under other managers to help put points on the board, was a leader in terms of on the football pitch in that regard. He's the first manager that's had to deal without that. And he went all last season without a striker, really, because Richarlison spent so long out. Despite all of that, he still managed to guide Tottenham back into European football, which we wanted as fans, and also finished fifth in the league, which is why I don't buy he's got no clue, this, that, and the other, because then what does that make the other 15 managers that finish behind him? Now, in terms of heading into this season, I feel like he was massively let down in the transfer window. Now, I know he's come out and he's took ownership and said, all the players that come in here are of my say-so. However, I think that's just him playing 5D chess. If he comes out and moans about the transfer window like Conte did and Jose did, it's going to cost him his job. He knows that. The proof is in the pudding. So he's trying to play a different game. But he doesn't take ownership just for the transfer window, by the way. He takes ownership for every other problem that Spurs has when it's put to in the press conference. His response always is, oh, it's something that I have to fix. It's something that I have to work on. I hear nothing from Daniel Levy, from the director of football, or the players. They could all come out and help him to a large degree and come out and say stuff and back the guy. But they do not. They're just happy to sit there and watch him being thrown under the bus, just like previous managers. It's inherent at Tottenham Hotspur, despite a change in the dressing room. It's not good enough. And that's more falls on Daniel Levy. But coming into this transfer window, Postecoglou spoke all last season and all the summer about the want to compete for trophies at Tottenham Hotspur to be able to get there next season. That was his aim. Now, I'm sorry, but no one, if you're looking at it objectively, no one could say to me that he turned around to the board and said, bring me in a load of teenagers and I'll go and get that job done. I'll deliver what the fans want. I'm sorry, nobody, absolutely nobody can convince me of that. I feel it went wrong in the transfer window, and we're covering tracks right now in the press. I feel like we're seeing the changeover from Paratici and Gabbanini to Johan Lang and Rob McKenzie. And I'm of the opinion Johan Lang does not know how to get the big deals done. And that's why we end up scrapping around late, bringing in a couple of teenagers just to sort of appease the fan base. And I don't think it's good enough. I also think he's going to be as bad for Tottenham as Steve Hitchin was for Tottenham. And I think he's lack of being able to get big deals done is why Aston Villa kicked him out of the club and brought in Munchie. And that's why they're kicking on now, because they've been able to go out there and get good deals done where Johan Lang couldn't. Also, in the transfer window, me and many others around the Spurs community, lots of people said we need to go out and sign players to be able to come in here, improve other areas in the team, and provide competition for places. We did not do that. Everybody said we need to sign leaders. We also did not do that. And I think we're seeing the repercussions of that now in games. When the going gets tough, there's nobody on the pitch that wants to stand up and help the situation. They're all just rolling over, waiting to get into the dressing room and looking at Ange Postecoglou. And that is one area where I think Ange Postecoglou has got it wrong. In previous clubs, he's well known for standing out of the dressing room and allowing leaders in the dressing room to police that dressing room. We have none at Tottenham Hotspur. He needs to realise this very, very quickly, roll his sleeves up and start getting his hands on in that dressing room and dragging people along with him. That's what great leaders do, and that's an area that he needs to change of his management to help the situation. So, where I'm at with Everton, I don't think he's been perfect at Tottenham Hotspur, but I'd argue managers do make mistakes, like I highlighted. Defensively, he needs to fix that up. He needs to change his tactics slightly, and also, in terms of the way he approaches the dressing room, he also needs to change that. But like I've highlighted, I think some of the inconsistencies we're seeing is due to a lack of a poor transfer window, not bringing enough players to provide competition, but also not buying any leaders either. So I think that was mismanagement in terms of the transfer committee and Daniel Levy ultimately. But where I'm at, we've 5 games coming up. We've Man City away. We've got Roma at home. We've got Fulham at home, we've got Bournemouth away, and then we've got Chelsea at home. Now, Man City away is not going to be easy. Roma, a European stalwart, they'll turn up no matter what. They'll be hard to beat. Fulham, going to be a difficult game, as proven in years gone by. Bournemouth taking big scalps at their place. And Chelsea, we all know our abysmal record against Chelsea. And quite frankly, with the drop points to Ipswich, Crystal Palace, and Leicester, there is no room for margin here. They have to go out and they have to put consistency together and put points on the board. I think the next 5 games will tell us everything, whether this is a project ready to kick on or whether everyone's fed up with each other and we're sitting here again looking for a new manager. But you know what, guys? If it is Ange Postecoglou or not that takes this club forward, I do think as a fan base, I think the problem we've got right now is everyone has different timelines on how long a project should take to bear fruit. One thing I look at is history at Tottenham Hotspur. Jose Conte, Postecoglou, they've all had about, between 14 to 17 months in the job. When I look at it, I don't think it's long enough to be able to navigate the problems internally at Tottenham Hotspur and drag everybody your way, especially against an owner that's looking to save a buck and pull against you at every opportunity. I think they need longer at Tottenham Hotspur. I don't think we're going to see things as instant as we do at other clubs at Tottenham Hotspur, purely down to the way our ownership operates. But look, guys, so I think for me, the next 5 games tells everything. That's where I'm at. Hopefully that clears it up.
Hey guys, Spurs fan John from the Lads It's Tottenham podcast. My thoughts on Ange Postecoglou. Well, obviously he had a great start. That honeymoon period, we were playing great football. We were over the turgid times of Conte and co. All the positive then, obviously we had the Chelsea game, which was just over a year ago, which was a real turning point for last season. Now, an interesting conversation came up the other day. If that Chelsea game happened now, exactly the same, would we applaud the players off the pitch? I think the answer is probably no. That honeymoon period is definitely over. That said, overall, I think we're in the right direction with Ange. There's a lot of frustrations. I don't think we've signed necessarily the right players. Not for now, anyway. I think in the future, we've got a positive future. But for this season, I do think the best we can hope for is, well, we know we're not going to win the league, but I do think we wrote the league off before we even started with the signings we made. We got rid of a lot of experience, which we needed to. The likes of Højbjerg had to go. But I'm still frustrated we didn't replace his game management expertise in many ways. I think Andrew's made a lot of mistakes at times. I think sometimes his in-game management, Brighton away, was baffling. Even last week at I was at the Ipswich game and Sarr was injured, and obviously when Werner came on for him, we didn't make another sub till the 85th minute, which strikes me that Ange either isn't reading the game properly, which I doubt, or he doesn't trust the bench, which again goes down to our recruitment. I know we've got injuries, but that's very, very worrying. Would I stick with Ange? Yes, I would, because I don't really know where we go. I don't think we can keep turning over managers. It's really important that we have a sustained plan, we stick with it, we give them to the end of the season at the very least, and then take stock of where we are. We can't keep doing what Chelsea do of just change the manager, because they spend billions and billions and billions. And we know with this ownership, we're not going to be spending that. We've got to be realistic. The only way to get rid of the ownership, empty that stadium, which isn't going to happen because there's too many people who are too apathetic, or many tourists. Nothing wrong with the tourists coming to see the game, but you have to bear that in mind. So we are stuck in this limbo cycle of we're going to have a budget to spend, but it's only November. We had a brilliant performance against Villa in that second half 2 weeks ago. Last week was a car crash, admittedly a couple of days after a very tough game in Galatasaray. Even if there's players that didn't play in Galatasaray, you're still travelling. You're still not prepping for the Ipswich game until probably the Saturday, realistically. So we have to counter this. If you look at most teams that play Thursday night European football, they tend to struggle. Chelsea, again, obviously being a bit of a freak occurrence this year because they can change their entire squad, and they're playing. I mean, they played Noah's Ark the other day. Who of us have ever heard of Noah? I have to admit, I haven't. So let's give it time. Let's see how we go. We have got this weird 5 Thursdays in a row coming up. Let's see where we are in the new year. And at the moment, I am backing Ange, but I am frustrated by him.
What's happening, people? Hope you're well. Harry Scarf here, football content creator and YouTuber and founder of Scarfy Spurs Talk, and proud to be part of the Spurs Kings TV, as well as co-host. My thoughts, the question is on Ange Postecoglou's tenure so far and whether it can be successful. Well, at the time of recording, as we speak, in the international break, there is a little bit of pressure. I think on Ange Postecoglou, I think especially on social media, there's a little bit of divide and a few split opinions about Ange Postecoglou, with a few turning on him. After all, we've lost the same amount of games as Ipswich this season, 5. I think Ange's tenure so far has been mixed. I think there's been some really positive sides. There's some real highs, real lows, real bumps in the road along the way. Last season, I don't, for me, I'm absolutely crystal clear on this. I think any Spurs fan with common sense would have taken finishing 5th place and being back in the Europa League, considering the season before we were stuck, we were broken as a club on and off the pitch. There's a really hostile and horrible place to be. So much problems around the ownership, disconnect between the fans. That South Stand wasn't a nice place to be at all. We forget that. We finished 8th, so to get back to 5th place in Ange's first season, I think that's really impressive. And I think any of us would have taken it at the start of the year. People try and deny and, try and cut corners around that now because of the way we ended it. But all that matters, we would have taken 5th at the start of the year. But this year we've lacked inconsistency. Ange has missed it himself. But whatever you think, I think about Ange and his tactics, his style, I don't think sacking him right now would be the right option, or even considering to do so unless it dramatically went wrong. Because a lot of people rightfully point out that it's been 16 years without a trophy. But you can't, for me, talk about that, then want to sack Ange at the same time, because you start another project, you start another rebuild, you go back to square one, and it just only hinders us. So you might as well just stay with it. And these are, he's had players bought for him now. This team is his team. So he needs time, he needs a season regardless for me. But we need to find some consistency. He said it, and I completely agree. And only 3 away wins in the Premier League on the road this calendar year in 2024 is unacceptable. That isn't good enough. That's relegation form based off that, so it isn't good. And apart from that 10-12 game honeymoon period at the start, we've won the same amount that we've lost. And Nuno Espirito Santo was sacked from Spurs, only having a point less than Postecoglou, but managed to get less. So it doesn't look good reading for Ange, but it is early on. But there's no secret about it. I mean, Man City next, but after that we need to go on a winning run for sure as we go into the Christmas period. But what I will say is that if we had won that game, we would have gone into 3rd place. So it is fine margins. That's the difference a goal or two does make. It's really tight. That Premier League, that 3rd from 10th, well, 3rd until like 12th or 13th. It's really tight, decided by 3, 4, 5 points. So I think that is important to remember. So whether Ange's tenure will be successful or not, I think he's one-dimensional in a way, and I think he's really stubborn. He really believes. I like it to an extent, but I don't think he would change for much. Having said that, this year I think we've seen some positive signs. Fullback's not quite as inverting as much against Man City. We sat in a little bit and absorbed that pressure when it was right to do so. We've tightened up at times where needs be. Just changed a few things around, taking more shots, for example, going more direct via Solanke. So I do think we win a trophy this year, but long term, whether it be successful or not, I'm not quite sure. I don't know. I think we're really going to struggle in the league this year, but I think we might win the League Cup or Europa League, and I'd absolutely take that. For me, the trophy has to be the priority this year. We're all moaning as Spurs fans, but I'm not really bothered by the league, as long as you don't, not right down the bottom. But they are my thoughts. I'm undecided at this moment in time, but get behind him for now.
How do I rate Ange Postecoglou's tenure so far? I think, honestly speaking, initially he exceeded my expectations. I'm not going to lie to you, I was one of the ones at the beginning who didn't really want him in. I didn't think he had the experience or the big league experience to come in to my club and do anything. And then he finished 5th. 5th with that squad. Was able to turn Papsar into a player, brought in Van de Ven, brought in Vicario. Udogie was looking good under him as well, Porro as well. And I'm thinking, all right. And without losing Harry Kane and getting us 5th, this brother is better than I thought. And also, I didn't like the dusty football under Conte and Mourinho. So it was a breath of fresh air to see Tottenham on the front foot and having more ball possession and going at teams. And I was happy with that. I think at the moment, whether I think Postecoglou will be successful at Spurs, it's not looking likely. When you think on the back end of last season, the amount of games we've lost, the inconsistencies of this season so far, having lost half our matches, I'm not sure how he turns it around. And I think the worrying thing for me is not losing. You can lose any time. We were losing, but we were losing with Ange ball. We lost against Liverpool with Ange ball. We lost against Arsenal last season with Ange ball. You know, we lost against City, but we played well. We've not played well second half of Brighton. We've not turned up against Crystal Palace. And more worryingly, we didn't turn up at home against Ipswich. So, with that level of inconsistency, I don't really see it. However, if somehow, some way, Postecoglou is able to win a trophy this season, I think he can go on and do big things at Spurs. But he has to stop the inconsistencies, and at the moment, it doesn't look likely.
How's it going, Spurs Kings TV? Hope you're well. My name is Wilsey, and Marlon has politely asked me to give you my thoughts on Ange's tenure at the club so far. So if we look back to last season, obviously we were 10 games unbeaten. We had 8 wins, 2 draws, and then Chelsea came along and completely ruined our flow. Now that can be blamed on injuries because, to be fair to us, we had lots of injuries at that point, or it could just be blamed on poor management, as we've seen all throughout last season and a little bit this season. Looking at this season now though, we are 11 games in. We've won 5, we've drawn 1, and we've lost 5. So currently we have lost as many games as Ipswich, but we are second behind Liverpool in goal differential with a +11. So this season has been very topsy-turvy for Spurs so far, and there's no way of telling or pointing the finger on why that is the case. But it seems like Ange might have lost his dressing room at this point. Porro has his eyes on Real Madrid because of the comments made about him. Romero just doesn't seem like he wants to be here anymore. And the players just seem unbothered, really, if I'm honest. But if I'm to give you my overall opinion on Ange and whether he should stay and whether he's done well, I definitely think he's done well than most managers after Poch. To be honest, I think he's nearly done a better job than Conte. Obviously, Conte got us to the top 4, but I think Ange has put that whole team dynamic and playing the football that he wants to play, and he's mirrored that onto the pitch. But if we give him some time and we let our players get back from injury, I think a key squad is what we're missing right now. And with time, we can build that back up. And with January just around the corner, we can probably get some new signings and strengthen the depth even more. But those are my opinions, guys. If you liked what you saw, please subscribe to Spurs Kings TV, turn on notifications, and leave your comments on what you think about everyone's opinions today. And I'll see you very soon. Take care.
How have I seen Ange's tenure so far? Look, when Son had that goal disallowed against Chelsea, just before it went in and we carved them apart, I turned to my mate in the stadium and I said, I think we're going to win the league. And then the flag went up, and since then, I wouldn't say it's been downhill since then, but it's been a real roller coaster. Certainly been inconsistent. And if you take this season, I don't think it's been great. We've got 1 point from Ipswich, Leicester and Palace, and that's not good enough. We're struggling away from home in the league, and home wins, while some of them hammerings, seem to be second half comebacks, which I don't think is sustainable. Apart from the Everton game, most of them have been come from behind second half wins, and it's a results business, and I don't think they've been good enough. But there are reasons. I don't think the squad, I don't think the summer window was great. I think some players have let him down this season, and we've had injuries, but who hasn't? But the buck stops with the manager, really, and I think the squad, whilst it could be improved, should be good enough to get more than 1 point against Ipswich, Leicester and Palace. And will he be a success? Look, we're going well in the League Cup, we're going well in the Europa League. There's no guarantees we'll win those, but I think we can win one of those, or more than one of those. The FA Cup, I think we definitely have the quality to do so if we get the win behind us and get a good run in those. But ultimately, league form for me is still key, and I think it's been a little bit too inconsistent. So the jury's still out for me a little bit. I love what he's brought in. The vibe, certainly at the beginning, was so much better, brought us all together from what we had under Conte and Mourinho. But vibes aren't quite enough, and I think we need to start finding some consistency in the league. Cup runs will be great, but I don't think it'll be enough if we're struggling in the league.
Yes, people, what's good? It's your boy George, aka Do Rag Diaries. Shout out to Spurs Kings, man. The guys over there asked me my opinion on Ange's tenure so far and will he be successful at Spurs. Let's start off with his tenure so far. Finished 5th last season, very up and down. Started off we were top after the first 10 games. And then the season went downhill after that. Fair to say that the injuries may have caused some of that, but it was also fair to say that the performances just wasn't there towards the back end of the season when we had our players back. Now, I think that so far this season, it's clear to see that there is some issues with the team, definitely some issues with the squad, and we look very light. We look like a team that need more players, and it's very clear to see because when we're playing 2 games a week, the performance level's up here, then it's down there. And it's very up and down, very chop change. So it's one of those things that we're going to have to build upon. We're probably going to have to let him get time to be able to see what he can do with this team. And I'm of the fact that let's give him time. Let's give him his time. Let's let him play out the season. He says he always wins something in his second season. Show me. Prove me. Prove me wrong. In fact, prove me right. I want to see it because I think he can win something. I think Europa League looks like a very promising prospect. Obviously, look, I know what happened at Galatasaray. I'm not going to make any excuses. But I think in the next rounds, that's when teams start to play a lot more serious and you get the home and away legs. That's where we can start to take some advantage. So Europa League looks like a strong prospect for us to go out there and get a trophy. I demand that the team goes and do it. With regards to the Carabao Cup, again, in a very good position. Manchester United in the quarterfinals, not a trophy that I think we should focus on, but ultimately we need to be able to compete on all fronts, and getting through that next stage in the Carabao Cup is key, as well as maintaining performances in Europa League. So if he wins a trophy this year, most definitely he will be successful. But if he doesn't finish, if he doesn't finish in the top 4, or at least in a position where we're maybe a point off of top 4, or, lose it on the last day, it's probably going to have to get sacked. So his tenure so far has been meh. I'd probably rate it 5.5, 6 out of 10. Very exciting to watch the football, but even that sometimes is very predictable and we need to see more variations. But ultimately, I do think that Ange will be successful at Spurs. So at this moment in time, Ange in, and until if we're knocked out of all the competitions, then we're going to have a whole nother conversation. So let's see how the season plays out. Hopefully the second season syndrome that Ange has got is really a thing. I'd love to see a trophy, man.
Yes, Marlon and everybody at Spurs Kings TV. Jack here. You guys asked me to answer what do I think of Ange Postecoglou's kind of tenure, his time so far, as well as you wanted me to answer whether I think he'll be successful at Spurs. First off, I'll answer kind of his time so far, his tenure. If I were to rate it out of 10, give it maybe about a 6. I couldn't really go as far as a 7 just because, of course, he hasn't won anything yet. We also were knocked out of the cup competitions quite early last year, and you could say there was a very kind of up and down type nature to his first season and to a degree with this season so far. That being said, I've been very patient with Postecoglou for the most part. The only time I ever wobbled was kind of in the middle of that Coventry City game. But for the most part, I have kept my faith in him. I do think he has oversaw a lot of key transitions from the goalkeeper, had to replace Lloris, to replacing Harry Kane, leaving that huge size hole in the forward line, having to make a transition there, to helping finding new position and, incorporating new players like Pedro Porro, who was brought in under a previous manager, but needed to find a good position for in the defense or elsewhere. Destiny Udogie being brought in and incorporated so well, Mickey Van de Ven and others. And I feel like he even had to make a transition to that midfield as well, tweak it in a bunch of ways. So I am actually impressed by how many things Postecoglou, in my opinion, has had to kind of balance and sort of handle at once, really. And he's had a lot of plates he's had to deal with, so to speak. And I think he's definitely given us, a lot to, be happy about when it comes to the style of play, to the times when we do look good and we are convincing. We really can thrash teams, and we can do it in a much more, I think, aesthetically pleasing or just pleasing way in general with the style of play than we had under previous managers. And to a degree, at least when he first came in, I did feel like he kind of settled the fan base, united the fan base to the best of his ability. So for the most part, I do feel like, Ange Postecoglou has had a decent time here at Spurs. I think he needs to get more kind of a consistency to the results. I think that's the only thing that's been letting him down. I think he's doing a pretty good job in mostly every other area. It's just that results have been very inconsistent. He needs to turn some more of those kind of losses into draws, or some more of those kind of even losses into actual wins, and kind of a narrow win margin. It doesn't need to be a convincing 4-0 win every time, but it does feel like Spurs are that sort of team. Either we smack them up 3-0, 4-1, that type of thing, or we end up actually dropping points in a more embarrassing way than we would like. I think he's got to fix that. But for the most part, I've been pretty happy with Ange, and I'm going to stay very patient with Ange personally. And if will he be successful at Spurs? I think he will be if he can survive the season. And these next 5 games are really crucial. If he survives this season and does really well, maybe towards the end of the season, I think he will be successful and he will deliver a trophy, perhaps even the Europa League this year. But thanks, Marlon. Appreciate you guys. See you next time.
Hi there, Marlon. It's Nige from Pure Coys. Thank you very much for the question. The question you asked was, how do you rate Ange's tenure so far? And will he be successful at Spurs? I'll be honest, the first 10 games apart, which was fantastic, by the way, since that opening 10 games, it's been pretty uneventful. Too many defeats, 17 defeats in the last 39 games, which isn't good enough for me. 5 defeats in 11 in the league so far this season already. That's as many as Ipswich Town, and only the bottom 3 have lost more than us. 13 times we've gone behind at home at the last 15 games, and only 4 away wins this year, and 2 of them against 10 men. For me, it's not good enough. Like I said, 5 defeats in 11 already this season, and we still have the likes of Liverpool to play twice, Manchester City to play twice, Chelsea to play twice, and we have to go to the Emirates. We all know what our record is against all of those sides. We might get the odd result against City, but hardly any results against the others. I think it's going to be a long season. I think the next 6 games are massive for Ange. I think the next 6 league games, if we get 8 points, that would be fantastic. But I don't see that moving us up the table. And I think if we go into New Year 9th or 10th, I think Ange will be struggling to keep his job. That's just my opinion. Maybe a cup might keep him in a job, but I think Ange is really struggling. He is tactically inept. He is not prepared to change things. He's stubborn. He has one way of playing. Listen, I know a lot of the Ange lovers are going to bash me for it, but I think Ange is on the way out. Do I think he'll be successful at Spurs? Sadly, I don't. Listen, I'd love him to be successful at Spurs. I would love Spurs to get a trophy. I would love Spurs to become the club we all want them to become. But sadly, under Ange, I don't think it's going to happen. I will leave it there. Thank you for the question. Take care and see you soon.
So far, I'd rank Ange Postecoglou's tenure at Spurs as a 6 out of 10. There's been a lot of progress made, but also a lot of work to be done. Will he be successful at the club? Well, I think that depends almost entirely on 2 things. One, whether he is willing to adapt. It's all well and good doing it against a village where there's more sheep than people, but the Premier League, as we all know, is a different beast. There's clearly some problems in the team, both quality of players and some of the mistakes being caused potentially by the system. And the second thing is, are we going to give him the time, and are we going to properly back him? And that's on the board and on the chairman, Daniel Levy. Will it happen? I'm not too optimistic, to be honest. Frankly, we've been here before. This is our 7th manager in the last 5 years, and I really do hope that we do back him and get behind him. However, a lot also rides on whether the board are going to support him with the right players. Now, we've signed a lot of young, potentially exciting players, but they are only potentially exciting. They're not proven yet. As I say all the time, we need players for now, the 2024-25 season, and not for 3 years' time. So in January, let's get us a couple of experienced bodies in, back up at left back, because clearly Reguilon's not part of the plans, and an experienced quality 6 who can hopefully provide a bit more defensive cover as well. Get those and back in properly with a big window in the summer, and I'm sure that we can have a successful tenure at the club. But also, we're in the quarterfinals of the Carabao Cup. We're in a good position in the Europa League too. Those are 2 competitions that I would love us to win this year. FA Cup, we all know it's luck of the draw. We ended up with City last season. We could end up with an easier route to the final this year. But if we finish in a European spot and win a cup this season, that would definitely be a successful season. Anything less, it won't be good enough, unfortunately.
Hey Marlon and everyone at Spurs King TV. This is leader Dorset Spur. Been invited along to give my opinion on Ange Postecoglou's tenure at Tottenham so far, and also if I believe that he's ultimately going to be successful. So, starting off with, what do I make of Ange Postecoglou so far? I think you have to start off by thinking about where were we as a club, as a fan base, prior to Ange starting. Be honest, it wasn't my first choice. I kind of made a video about Arne Slot, and I know a final fan who gave me some good detail about Arne Slot, and I thought he'd be a great fit for us. But when Ange Postecoglou came in, I knew very little about him. But for me, starting off, he did really, really well in terms of galvanising the fan base, getting us to pull together in the right direction. There'd become a time where chants of Levy out were really prominent around the stadium. The players were not engaged with the fans. The manager wasn't engaged with the fans. We had no direction, no style of play, no idea where we were going. So when Ange came in, it was almost like a breath of fresh air. I really enjoyed seeing him interact with the players, getting the players to interact with the fans, the dropping back of Daniel Levy with Langer coming in, and all that kind of stuff. Kind of made me feel like we were turning the corner, we were going in a better direction. And so for me, that you have to take into account that starting point. In terms of the football has been better. We've seen more intensity, we've seen more fluidity and entertainment in the game. But of course, at the same time as that, we're seeing the problems with, getting the wins over the line and keeping up that intensity and so on and so forth. So for me, I guess it was a good start, but as fans, we want success, and we want success quickly. And I think that's where the frustration comes from. We're talking about a team that is rebuilding literally from the bottom up. We have cleared out all but probably 2 players that were originally at the club and rebuilding that in. Are they the right players? Time's going to tell on that. Are they for the future? Do we need a combination of good players now and players for the future? Because you've got to build long-term success, which is what Ange has been looking to go for. So for me, the jury's still out. I'm still part of the Ange in brigade. I still feel like we need to maintain some level of consistency from the bottom up. So instead of just talking about consistency on the pitch, we need consistency in our approach and what we're gonna do. Do I think he's going to be successful in the long term? I think that really depends on what Daniel Levy does, what the board do, and the patience of the fans. The more we get on his back, the more we get on the players' back, is that really going to help? You've got to voice your opinions, I get it, but it's a really difficult one. I would like to believe that we are going in the right direction and that we'll have more good days than bad days, but there will be bad days along the line. But I'm hoping that these turn around very, very quickly and we can move on, maybe pick up some silverware, even if that is this year, or at least come close. Give us something to dream about, Ange, something that you keep saying fans should be entitled to believe and they should be entitled to criticise. Well, let's hope that the criticism is enough to inspire rather than deflate. That's it from me. I hope that's okay. Thanks for having me on. Subscribe to these guys' channel and I'll see you again. Up the Spurs.
So do I think Ange's tenure at Spurs has been a success? It depends what you define as success at Tottenham, because we see Pochettino as being a success, but he never won us anything. One day Ramos won us more in his time, and look how bad his team was towards the end. And Harry Redknapp had to come in and pick up the pieces. Under Poch, we did get to a Champions League final. We got to a few other finals, semis, but we're in a few title races, you could say, maybe just about, but Leicester and Chelsea were always in front of us. So Ange's tenure, he did close a gap, you could say, got us into 5th and potentially 4th last year without European football. So we just was focusing on the league, got knocked out the cups early. And this season, We're still looking comfortable in the cups, like not been knocked out of any yet, and looking all right in the Europa League. But the league form has been patchy. You can't hide that. So I'd say if I was to rank his time, I think it has been a success. I think he has brought more of good energy to Spurs, better play, more attacking. But there are issues, and you can't deny that. We can't deny that. But I think we're in a better place and a more successful place than we were under Conte or Jose. So yeah, I still think we should keep Ange. I don't think it should be a knee-jerk reaction because I'm not sure who else there is available to get. You could say Thomas, Frank, or Iriola or whoever. I don't think they're going to leave their clubs right now. The best manager available has just gone in the sense of Ruben Amorim to Manchester United. So I think we should keep Ange at least to the end of the season and then pick up the pieces then. I think we can still do something under him as a manager, and he could help us eventually close the gap between the bigger sides. Because I think as Spurs, we need to know where we are, in this point of time. We've been in the doldrums and people will say we still are. But, a lot has to change. And that's not just, that's off the pitch. That's at board level. That's the more important thing. Whereas we need to become a proper footballing team. I still think Ange is the perfect person to do that, but, it's hard to tell at the moment. I think we've got the players. I think we've got the potential, maybe a bit more squad depth. And hopefully, this season, maybe we should just sacrifice the league. What's the point of qualifying for top 4? We don't, we're going to get into that Champions League and not win it anyway. We might as well go out in the Europa League or the Carabao Cup and get this trophy hoodoo off our back.
Good morning, everyone. Luke here at Park Lane Podcast. What are my thoughts on Ange Postecoglou's tenure at Spurs? Look, we can't all sit here and say it's been roses, but at the end of the day, it's a lot better than people are making out. Like, this guy, in my opinion, is trying to transform this football club back to the football club that it should be, back to the times under Mauricio Pochettino, under even times during Harry Redknapp's tenure at Spurs. And we've been through this time over the last 6-7 years of having buy to win managers that can come in and do all they need to do. You may have your own opinion on whether they were backed, not backed, and so on to be able to do that job. But these, superior managers were not able to do this at Tottenham Hotspur. What we have seen from Ange Postecoglou is he's able to transform a fan base quickly. And look, it's not everybody's cup of tea. We concede, goals. We lose against teams like Ipswich. But let's remember, in the last game when we did lose against Ipswich, if we'd won that game, we'd have moved probably into the top 4. Yet now, after losing that game, we sit 10th. Now let's look at some stats under Ange Postecoglou, because we've scored approximately 23 goals and conceded 13. That's exactly the same as Manchester City, who currently sits second in the Premier League, apart from they've scored one less goal than us. They've scored 22 and conceded 13. Yet people look at Manchester City as potential title candidates. So Ange Postecoglou is doing everything that he can with the resources available to be able to transform this football club, and I think that he will be a success at Tottenham Hotspur. Let's look as well at previous managers. So after 50 games, or the first 50 games, Jurgen Klopp in the Premier League had 26 wins. Mikel Arteta has had 26 wins. Ange Postecoglou has had 25 out of 49 games. These are people who pundits would suggest are elite level managers, and our fan base would suggest that Ange Postecoglou is potentially not, or some of our fan base. I personally think that he will be a success at this football club. We need to go back to having patience. We need to go back to having time, and we need to back this manager not only through transfer markets, but also through our voices in the stadium and online as well. But yeah, it's been good to give my opinion on this matter. Cheers, everyone.
Oh, what's good? It's your boy Flicks. So, how do I think Ange Postecoglou has done so far as Tottenham Hotspur manager? Well, let's face it. With last season being Ange's first full season in charge at Tottenham Hotspur, we just finished 5th, missing out on a top 4 finish. Only just, with Aston Villa topping it, pretty much near the end, and if I remember rightly, last game of the season, it was confirmed that Aston Villa got 4th. Look, we lost Harry Kane last season as well. Literally a couple of days before the season was going to kick-start. And, you know, losing an all-time goal scorer, in my opinion, I thought, shit, okay, we've lost Kane. Right, we've actually now got to play as a team. How is Ange going to do that? So finishing 5th last season, look, not too bad. Not too bad in my opinion. I was expecting a lot worse. Like I said, losing Kane was a massive loss. But in the end, I'm going to say it wasn't such a loss. You know, finishing 5th, look, I thought we were too big for our boots. Let's be honest. Too big for our boots, finishing 5th. Clinching Europa, but going on to this season, it's been a very topsy-turvy one. Spurs, honestly, I hate the name Spursy, but it's true. Dr. Tottenham, it's true. It happens. Are we cursed? Is it Levy? Is it Enick? Is it the managers? What the fuck is it? Honestly, I'm sick to death. There's never any consistency when it comes to Tottenham Hotspur. Let's face it, never any consistency. Look, we beat Man City. We beat Man United, even though they are poor. Let's face it, they are poor. But then we go and lose to Ipswich Town. Come on, it was only, what, a fucking year ago they was in League One. You know what I mean? It's ridiculous. And not only losing to Ipswich Town, we lost at home in our own backyard. We handed them their first win of the Premier League season, of them coming back, and it's been, what, fucking 20 years since they was last in the Premier League. Not only that, Crystal Palace haven't won a game this season until they played us. We handed it to them on a plate. The same with Ipswich. We handed it to them on a plate. It was absolutely terrible. Outrageous. Absolutely outrageous. And if I remember rightly, because I know we've lost 5 games already, and we've only played 10. That's not good enough. Simply not good enough. We lost to Arsenal. Okay, yeah, only just lost to them in a dying minutes, if I remember rightly. Newcastle, Brighton were the other couple of games. But come on, it's not good enough. Look, Ange has got to do better with the tactics. Leaving Maddison on the bench, it fucking frustrates me. It really does. Frustrates me so much. That guy should be starting. Look, going back onto the last game as well, against Ipswich, he left Maddison and Basuma. 2 players that should be starting. Honestly, Draguzin, I don't know what the hell's going on with Radu, but going back onto Postecoglou, his tactics need to be a lot better. At the same time, I'm going sort of off subject now, but Levy and Enick, I've said it time and time again, I've said it year after year, we are not going to win a trophy, and I hope I'm wrong, but we're not going to win a trophy with those Muppets in charge. I'm telling you now, we are not going to win nothing. Like I said, I hope I'm wrong, because obviously I want Tottenham to win silverware. I really, really do. But I really can't see it happening ever again with Levy and Enick in charge. We've won one Poxy trophy, and that was back in 2008. But with Ange, he's so stubborn. So stubborn. Like I said, with the tactics, the formations at times, and the subs. He leaves the subs far too late. He just stands there on the side with his arms folded. For fuck's sake, man. Honestly, he's got to start Maddison, Basuma more, especially Madders. Come on, man. And after the international break, he has got a very hectic schedule. Obviously, Man United coming up in the League Cup quarterfinals, a must win. They've got a new manager now. How are they going to pan out? But come on, we can't be losing these pathetic games in the league if we want to clinch top 4. So, Ange, he needs to get the tactics right. Like I keep saying, tactics, the formations, subs, leaving it far too late. But we will see after the international break how it's going to pan out. Because like I said again, it's going to be very hectic once it kick-starts again after the Nations League. But again, Ange, he always comes out and says, I win a trophy in my 2nd season. Is he going to do that at Tottenham? I hope he does. But can we see it happen? Is it really going to happen? Only time will tell.
Hey, Jim here from Oso Spurs. How would I rate Ange Postecoglou's tenure so far? And I've given it a number, and I'm going to give that to you in about 2 minutes out of 10 on how I rate it. But I want to give some context as to how I came to that number. I want to just highlight the situation Ange Postecoglou inherited at Tottenham. I think it's important to think back that he inherited a squad that was clearly going to lose Harry Kane. The core of that whole team was, the senior pros were Eric Dyer, they were Lucas Moura, they were Davinson Sanchez, Perisic, Hugo Lloris, a lot of players that had been at the club for a period of time, but it wasn't going to work for them and they needed offloading. And they were the core of the dressing room of that squad. So that reflects that Ange had to overhaul 18 of his 25-man squad in 18 months. Also worth noting that we'd gone through a manager cycle of Nuno Espirito Santo, Jose Mourinho, obviously Conte. If you want to count Ryan Mason and Stellini, that's up to you. But low block, counter-attacking managers who typically play three at the back. So to overhaul 18 players and a new system and then try bring in a new culture to the club was a huge, huge ask, particularly when Harry Kane was leaving, right? We know Tottenham came 8th in that previous season, but that flattered Spurs. That's how bad I believe our squad was at that point. But that squad was carried by his goals and Heung-min Son's performances. Without them, I honestly believe Spurs would have been way down in the bottom half of the table last season. So it was picking up a neglected Tottenham side that really needed sorting out. So we had to remove Harry Kane's goals and replace them. But I think Spurs have done pretty well with that. I think Ange has done pretty well. He's had to replace 18 of the 25-man squad, and I think the majority of his signings have been good. There's been some I'm still skeptical of. I'm not completely convinced around James Maddison. I think Brennan Johnson's doing really well. He suits the system fantastically, but I'm not convinced he can solely be relied upon as our only option on the wing. I think we need another type of winger there just to mix things up when it's not going to be his game and the system's not clicking the way it should. But there's areas Ange deserves some, constructive criticism for, shall we call it? And I think that's we were quite slow to react to our set piece issues, which seem a lot better this year than they were last year. But I still think we were slow to adjust to those. I think substitutions in games can be late. They could have been earlier. We used to have that at Pochettino as well. Some managers are adamant about making players learn and see those games as a lesson of development. So they're not keen to make those substitutions. They're willing to suffer some short-term pain for what they see as long-term game. That's another thing. And I think the third area we need to improve on is we've seen 5 of our last 6 goals from pretty much the same spot, about 6-7 yards out on the right-hand side of the opposition box. It seems if you can cross a ball in above shoulder height, our defenders don't attack it, and there's typically a man left unmarked. So that's seen us drop a lot of points this season. But overall, I think there's a huge improvement on how Tottenham are playing versus last season. Naysayers will say, look at the points. But hey, you don't play all teams in the same order in the Premier League. There's an act of randomness in football. That's what makes it such a brilliant sport. And hey, you're 3 points off third. It's not a disaster. I think Spurs overachieved in the first 10 games last season on points versus performances, and they've vastly underachieved this year. And the mean will take us to a place where Spurs are slightly better this year than they were in the year before in terms of points at the midway point and comfortably above at the end of the season. So fully behind Ange Postecoglou, I'm going to give him a 7 out of 10 so far. I think Spurs would be crazy to even talk about sacking him at this point. I don't think they will either. He needs to get his number 6. He needs to get another winger, and he needs to get a left-footed backup wing back as well into that squad. And I believe things will start to click. So up the Spurs. Come on, Big Ange. Fully behind you at Oso Spurs.
Hello, and I hope you're all well. Thank you to Marlon for considering me to offer my views regarding Ange's tenure so far as Spurs manager, and do I think he will be successful? I mean, his first year in a proper league, let's just get that out of the way for some. Some might say Ange has made a strong start. Yeah, okay, 8 wins, 2 draws in the first 10. Then inconsistency hindered our league last season. Despite losing Harry Kane, the club's or the squad, best defender and attacker, and an overall height loss of 8 centimetres. That is, players going out and players coming in. Of course, set pieces were a big issue, but it wasn't Ange's concern. I understand that because he had other issues in other facets or areas of the game that he wanted to improve. So that's something that I'd like to start mentioning. Despite losing Harry Kane, we scored more goals and conceded less goals than the season prior, which was Harry's last season. He's implemented an attacking style, and it's more entertaining when it works, although inconsistency can kick in and we can lose games through lack of concentration by our defenders or midfield, whatever. But it's totally different this season than last season. I think that's quite apparent. He also garnered 3 Manager of the Month awards in a row, and that's in his first season. That's for an out-of-depth manager. Currently, this season 24-25, the league's top-scoring team and second best attack defence ratio with +10, only behind Liverpool, which is +15. In the Europa League, 9 out of 12 points, 3 wins and 1 loss in 4, is a pretty good start to his first season in Europe for Spurs. In the Cup, we're quarterfinals so far, and it's looking not bad at all. As I said before, a few challenges, inconsistencies, and adaptation to the league, which all managers have to go through. Even Pep Guardiola, when he went to Bayern Munich, knew that he couldn't play the same as he did for Barcelona, and when he went to Manchester City, knew that he couldn't implement the exact same as he did for Bayern Munich. So adaptation is logical. Would we have preferred other results at some other points, or substitutions, or he leaves it too late, or he doesn't know what he's doing, or he's tactically not sound as a manager? I do not believe that at all, and I've always defended it through positive and real criteria. Fan criticism hasn't helped his tenure, but I believe that he is unfazed by this. He knows exactly what he wants and how to get it, and how to improve over time to achieve his goals. So what I recommend is patience. I also appreciate his resilience towards criticism, whether that be the press, media, social media, or fans, as I've said before. And his dealing with the press, as I said before, pretty spot on, whether it's to have a laugh or whether it's to contend silly questions, or we know how the press goes. I believe he will be successful, whether that is by winning trophies or by implementing improving the aura of the club to make Spurs what it used to be, attractive. And when Spurs are in town, that you're going to get your money's worth, basically. So that would be in the mid to long term. And he's implementing a blueprint, that we need for the mid to long term, and that we haven't had in many years. So I'm positive, I'm Ange, and will he be successful? I believe he will be, in one way or another. Thank you once again for considering me to answer the question. It's been a pleasure, as always, and come on, you Spurs.
Hello everyone at Spurs Kings, it's Robbie from Lily White Lane. I hope that you're all having a really good day. I've been asked by Marlon to do a quick video giving my thoughts and opinions on Ange Postecoglou and how he's been doing so far this season. And in my opinion, it's been a real mixed bag. There have been positives and there have been tweaks to the system. At times we've countered opposition, and in my opinion, we've played better for it, had less of the ball. At times one wing back is inverted when the other hasn't, and these were things that weren't happening last season. So there have been changes to the system. I think our home form form has been phenomenal. At home, we look a lot better than we did last season, but there's still a lack of consistency at the football club that Ange Postecoglou needs to sort out. In certain games, he'll make changes when he needs to, and in others, he'll make the wrong changes or no changes at all until it's too late. So, look, so far this season, in my opinion, Ange, I wouldn't say he's doing a great job. I wouldn't say he's doing a terrible job. Early in the season, I was close to saying something such as Ange out because of the results and performances, but they have picked up since for the most part. But the Brighton game, the Palace game, they show that we're still capable of doing a Spurs. So far, I would probably rate this season and the job that Ange is doing this season a 5 out of 10. If we can get that consistency, start picking up our form away from home, it moves up to maybe a 7 for me. If things start dropping off, if we can't get that consistency, if we don't get Champions League or win a trophy this season, it drops maybe down to a 3 or 4. But guys, cheers for having me on. I'm going to make like a banana and split. Take care. Come on, you Spurs.
Yo, it's your boy Mr. Box Office from Mr. Box Office TV. Giving my rating for Ange Postecoglou so far and what is he going to achieve this season. And my rating for Ange Postecoglou is quite simple. 4. Not impressed whatsoever. Not so impressed whatsoever about Ange Postecoglou. Yes, he's a very good manager. Man-manager, that is. As a coach, not a very good coach. He talks way too much. I don't enjoy watching his football. I think it's overhyped. He hasn't improved anybody, like I've said before. I think he can't handle big characters because some of the big characters have left this club. And so he can't handle a man like Maddison, and that's it, and not playing him well. He doesn't adapt, and that's it. And I just think that it's just absolutely overhyped. I was absolutely justified for not backing the manager when he came in. And that's really the history of Tottenham. So really, that's not his fault. And this is all on him, and that's it. And I think he gets too many excuses. Well, we didn't have any excuses for Antonio Conte and Jose Mourinho because they didn't have a better squad that this guy's having right now, and that's it. And I'm sorry, that's the truth, and that's it. And I think he's only going to end up just achieving 7th this season and no trophies, like always, and that's it. And that's all I need to say, and that's it. So I'm sorry to the Spurs Kings audience, the Spurs Kings members, but I don't rate my manager. And that's all I need to say, and that's it. Your main event, the Professor of Truth and Entertainment, the ratings killer, the people's champion, and everyone's guilty pleasure. And if you don't know, get to know. And I'm out.
Hey, it's at JJ Coder. Been asked to do a brief, I'll try and keep it brief video on Tottenham 1, Ipswich 2. My initial reaction was just full of anger. Just looking at it, a complete arrogance and ignorance of a team that's thinking it's better than it is. A club thinking that it's better than it is. And that, I think, is if you try and strip down everything else and you look at all the bits, I think that's where the clear problem is. The club that we support is a club that very much believes it should be better than what it is, and almost looks down on certain clubs. As we saw, we turned up in that second half against Villa and absolutely decimated them. We turned up against Manchester City, yet for some reason we gave Crystal Palace their one and only win, and we've given Ipswich their one and only win. I think we're very lucky that other teams have actually won their games. So was I surprised looking back at it? Not really. This is something that we are capable of, and we've been capable of for years, decades, things like that. And one of the issues that always seems to be, in the way is the fact that we just look at the here and now, and we can do that. Ange's arrogance, the players' arrogance, the level of disrespect to Ipswich, and I think they have to be given credit. They were the better team. They deserved it. Okay, we sort of dominated the game once it got to 2-1, but they helped their shape and they knew how to beat us, and credit to Kieran McKenna and what they're doing there with regards to being able to do that. But if we look at the bigger picture here, if this was a genuine one-off and we weren't going to see it again, then, you know, it would be a case of, okay, fine, we let it go. But this is just a common theme. This is who we are, you know, and, you know, you can look at Ange and can you think, is he making progress? You know, do I want him in or out? In terms of that, I don't know, because the question is that, well, who's next? We've seen it before with other managers. We've seen it before with other players, you know, and it's really telling the amount of players and the amount of managers that leave our club and are more of a success. That is what's worrying, and that is where ultimately, if you look at it, that to me is the underlying problem. But that, I think, starts from the top and works down. Whether we'll see that fixed, who knows? Oh well, enjoy the international break. Come on, you Spurs.
How you doing, guys? I hope you're all well. How do I see Ange's tenure, and will it be a successful one? It's a good question. It's a good question. At the moment, guys, how I see it is, in terms of results since the start of the season, it's not been the greatest. We've pretty much 50% win, 50% loss ratio, which is not the greatest. It's in par now with Nuno when he was at Spurs, and we know what happened there. Now, for me, we have too many inconsistencies. It's clear. The results state that. It's too many inconsistencies. 3 times we've gone international break. We followed them with losses. If we could have turned 2 or 3 of those defeats into even a draw, we'd be looking at a different table, a healthier table, which, in terms of table, league standing right now, we're not a million miles away. It's not like it all is lost, but we are where we are, and that cannot be denied. We've qualified in the next round of the EFL Cup, which is a good thing, and Europa League standings. So in terms of where we're situated in those 3 competitions, all is not lost. But if we don't start addressing these issues that we have within our squad, and the defensive unit not working as one, conceding cheap goals, real stupid loss here against Ipswich, and another one at Palace, which still we got to now stew for the next couple of weeks, and the pressure mounts on the manager. So in terms of how Ange Postecoglou is doing, he's got to do better, even within himself. He's got to be a bit more consistent in what he does. And in terms of, you know, getting Maddison back on board, what's happening with that relationship there? Sonny, our captain, Sonny, Romero, we need to, like, unite, because they got to give off to everyone else. So that needs to be sorted out. There's little bits here and there that are mounting up to these issues that we currently are having. The consistency thing is a massive one that we still haven't been able to deal with. 2024, guys, we haven't really picked up a lot of wins away from home. It's terrible away from home. It's terrible. All year has been. So can Ange do it? Ange can do it, but he needs to be a little bit more humble, in my opinion. I think he's been very stubborn in certain things. I think if he can rectify that and really reunite everyone again and go on a charge of 3, 4, 5 consecutive. When was the last time we had a run of games, consistent run of games where we were playing well and picking up results? That hasn't happened in a little while, so he needs to start doing these things. We've got 10 big games, 11 big games coming up between post-internationals right up until the New Year's, and I think a lot of it will come down to what the atmosphere, what the ambience is like. If depending on the results, will then Levy pull the trigger? If Levy feels under pressure, you know what he's like. He can pull the trigger at any point in time. Although, like I said, for as long as the league table doesn't look too bad and we can climb up the table because we are within touching distance, then I think he will stay in. But his time at Spurs, for me, would massively depend what happens in the next 10 days. If we start going on a little run and address the feeder situation, defensive situation, attention situation, consistency, if we can get that sorted out, then I can see him doing well. If he doesn't, then you know how toxic this place can get very, very, very quickly. We've had a history of that. And I think the unity within the players, if they start turning on the manager, we've got a history of that as well.
then that can quickly change. So many little factors that need to come together, and right now it's really on the balance, in my opinion. It's really on the balance as to whether he will stay and he will go. So he needs to really, the next 10, 11 games for me are going to be massive. Will he not make it into the new year? I don't know, guys. That's the answer to that. I don't know. I hope he does. I hope he turns it around. I hope the players turn it around. But it's a big ask, because one thing that I've known very quickly in the last 11 games, that this team cannot be trusted. They pull it out of the bag when they want, and they can quickly just drop off when they want as well. A team like that cannot be trusted, and I don't know if we can get those results. We were here again. Anyway, I'll end this video by saying, as always, forever always, come on you Spurs.
Big up Marlon at Spurs King TV. I'm Perchy. You may recognise me, may not. I'm back again, back stronger. But before anything else, guys, like and subscribe to these fabulous people if you're watching this. Come on, these guys do amazing content. Let's show some love first and foremost. You've asked me a question. What do I rate Ange's tenure, and is he going to be successful at Tottenham? Let's break that all down. For me, what's his tenure been like? It's a roller coaster, really. We win some, we lose some. We don't really have any consistency. I think tactically, there's a lot to be desired about this manager. I think tactically, massively not there for me. That's just my opinion. I know he gets a lot of love, this guy. I just think at the moment we're at a stage with this that we need a little bit more from this manager. It's all good coming out and saying, oh, don't worry about defending. Well, hang on a minute. We're a professional football club. This isn't Sunday League. This isn't an academy sort of thing. We need to learn to defend. We've got good defenders. I don't think we've got amazing defenders, but we've got good enough defenders to defend better than we have done. And that for me is the biggest crux of it all. There is a nucleus at this club that you go, I don't mind. I like. I think there's a lot I don't like about this club, and we don't need to delve into that one for now. But and then the next question was, is Ange going to be successful at Tottenham? I'll ask the question to you and the viewers. What is success at Tottenham? What is success? I hear this all the time. Will a manager be successful? But what is success? For me, as a fan, success is winning trophies. If it's the League Cup, if it's the FA Cup, if it's Europe, if it's the Premier League. Is this manager going to be successful at Tottenham? I mean, he can be. We've seen Wando Ramos nick a cup at this club. So, yeah, can he nick a cup? Yeah, I don't see why not. For me, is this manager long-term going to be successful? I don't think he is. I don't think he's at the calibre of a manager to be sustainably successful. But I go back to the question I just asked a minute ago. What is success at Tottenham? For me, it's at the board. Success is money, deals, concerts, NFL, F1, name it. I mean, we've just announced a VPN sponsorship or whatever it's called, a VPN partnership. Like, that for me is what success at Tottenham. Not what I want, not what you guys want in the channel, in the chat, you guys on the panel. For me, success is driven by what our aim at as a football club is. It's all well and good for us going, we should just go and get X, Y player. We should just do this, we should do that. Not if the people at the top want it. And that for me is the difference. Success is so subjective. Subjective to me, success is winning trophies. Will this manager win trophies? He can do. As I said, he can nick a cup here and there. Is he going to be successful sustainably? Don't think so. I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much, guys. I hope you enjoy my opinion. And on Monday, the Perchy returns. Make sure you're there. Big up, Marlon. Thank you for the opportunity. Take care, mate.
Hi, everyone. Hello, Marlon. Here's the video as promised. You didn't need to chase me more than once. So, I know you're putting together a video, Marlon, about Tottenham. Will Ange be a success? I think that's what you asked me. Hang on a minute. Let me just move the camera so I can see it. How do you rate his tenure so far, and will he be a success? What to say? So far, I don't think we've seen anything different than the previous 23 years, consistently inconsistent. We have games where, whether it's the players, the manager, even the fans sometimes, you know, one minute it's all hunky-dory, the next minute it's the end of the world. I think that's probably the best way to sum up his tenure so far, consistently inconsistent. Will he be successful? Time is the big thing. Do I think he's going to be successful? I don't think he's going to get the time. I think he's very stubborn in terms of doing things or not doing things. 1 minute it looks like he's changing and adapting. The next minute it looks like he doesn't have a clue. So yeah, I mean, time is the big thing, and like with most Tottenham managers, they don't get time. Do we have another option? I don't know. Probably not. Do we need to make a change? I don't know. I'm kind of numb. I'm kind of numb with it all now. As much as you want to try and be positive all the time, back the team, back the manager, they just always seem to let you down, which is unfortunate. So look, the answers. There's more questions than there are answers. This is Tottenham Hotspur. Whatever happens, I think we know how this rodeo ends. And if we have a bad, 2 or 3 bad performances after the international break, I think there's only going to be one outcome. Do I think Daniel Levy wants to sack Ange? No, because then the heat comes back to him. But look, I just want us to play the football that we've been playing in the games that we've been playing. But, injuries, the games that are coming up, I just think we've seen this all before, right? It's all going to unravel. And I'll be very shocked if he's there by Christmas. I said it at the start of the year. Spent a lot of money. Hasn't really fixed the problems. Look, let's just try and stay positive. It's very difficult at the moment. What can we do? Unfortunately, we support Tottenham Hotspur. But we're getting a number of things wrong at the moment. We all know the flaws. We all know where we're going wrong. So yeah, we'll just have to wait and see. Watch this space.
How would I rate Ange Postecoglou's tenure at Spurs? I think I need to separate his tenure into 3 parts. I think last season, and then the present, and then the future, I think, or the sort of projected sort of trajectory that we're on, sort of thing. But the last season, I think the majority of us would say it was really positive. I know we had our ups and downs, but we had a lot of injuries, and our team was at the very beginning of this sort of journey under Ange, and we still had a lot of deadwood that we needed to clear, which we have in this period so far under Ange. Likes of Dyer, Højbjerg, etc., Perisic, there's Emerson. There's been a lot of players that were needed to go, and we knew that. And I think the thing that Postecoglou sort of brought to the club was the identity on the pitch, and he actually maybe fall in love with Tottenham again. But I think we all accepted the weaknesses and the fragilities of the tactics and the squad heading into the summer, thinking that we were going to really kick on and make some game-changing signings. And we had a really good, positive summer transfer window in his first summer. And I thought we were going to see the same thing again, where we signed one established player who has improved the squad, Solanke. I think he's been a really good signing. But you've got a bunch of young players with bundles of talent and potential, but they're not going to reach the potential for another 4 or 5 years, and Postecoglou's probably not even going to be there. So I don't actually think I don't think he's been backed at all. I think we've had a really poor
window, where a lot of other teams have been really reactive and or proactive in the window, like Chelsea, etc., signing game changers that it has allowed them to eclipse us, and that's what's really frustrating, is because the data shows that we have improved in attacking numbers, but I don't think we've got the players to get where we want to be, and what Postecoglou hasn't done, which is really frustrating, is worked on the details, that the minor details, the margins that win you football games. I think set pieces have slowly improved this season, but we're still seeing the same sort of patterns, defensive patterns, as we were seeing last season, where we're conceding goals. And if we're not on form at the other end, all of our hard work is going to be completely undone at the other end. And in the Premier League, you cannot allow teams to exploit you the way we do. So I think there's a bit of frustration being having crept in, understandably and justifiably. So at the moment, I am frustrated because, again, we're playing really well in attack, but if we have an off game, we get absolutely done on transition, on crosses, now and again corners, and it's frustrating. It's so frustrating, and I really felt like this summer was the time to kick on. And if you're going to sort of look at the trajectory we're going on, because we were having a good trajectory going into this season, I don't know how this can be sustainable. How can the players believe in this project if we're losing to Ipswich and Crystal Palace the way we're losing? And I do worry for Postecoglou. And I think January and the summer, they're make or break for Postecoglou, and I think the board, because I feel like we can't have another failed project. But the thing is, I want to stick with him because I love him, but I just don't think there's that many candidates out there that I'd want and think, yeah, they'll come in and do a better job. I don't think there is. So I'm with him all the way. I'd rate his time at Tottenham a 6.57, I think. But again, early days, and that's the thing. And actually, I've been thinking about it. Arteta and Klopp, they had a really up and down start to their tenures at Arsenal and Liverpool. The only thing is, they had the board that had the ambition to fully back them and trust them. I don't know if we got that under Daniel Levy, and I don't think we saw it in the summer. So it's almost like he's being set up to fail. So I think there's a little bit of scepticism creeping in. But no, I think mostly positives, but frustrations start to creep in. And I mean, I'm doing this straight after the Ipswich game, so obviously the frustration's going to take over. But yeah, that's what I think.
Hello, Ash Marlon, Spurs Kings TV. Hope you guys are doing well. You've asked me to do a video to rate Ange so far as a manager at Spurs, and ask the question: Do you think I will think he'll be successful or not? So let me tell you, he came in last season. He wasn't the first choice manager. Didn't know too much about him, but look, I heard what he did at Celtic. He played attacking football, high pressing football. I thought, look, let's see how we get on. The transfer window weren't too bad. We signed the likes of Maddison, Van der Ven. Obviously, the big test for Ange was losing Kane. So, you know, there was obviously worries that we didn't sign a forward. We brought in Brendan Johnson for a lot of money. And so, look, the season started as it did. We took the first 10 games. We kind of surprised a lot of teams. We got some very good results. And but what happened is, after that 10 games, we had the injuries, we had the suspensions. The team was really, really struggling after that 10 games. And what you saw throughout that second half of the season was a lot of teams just worked us out. They worked out how to play. We all know that Gary O'Neill had the blueprint, and many teams, low to mid-table teams, would then have a plan against us. Yeah, it didn't always work for them, as you would see that, you know, as due to our better quality of player, we've normally outgunned teams. But what the concerning thing was is when we played against anyone decent, any top side, like Liverpool, Arsenal, Chelsea, City, we would lose. We lost so many games in that second part of the season against the top teams, and the only game which I remember against a top team was Villa away, when we won 4-0. So there was concerns. Ange wasn't adapting. We were a mess at set pieces. There were a lot of issues in that second part of the season. Even when we got all the players back, it just wasn't working. And the thing was that we were still in contention for a Champions League place right into the end of the season. And if Ange, for me, would have adjusted a bit, dropped the high line a bit, just changed it, because I'm sure we could have got those points and got that Champions League. So I do put that on Ange. But look, it was his first season. You've got to give a manager time. The summer transfer window comes in, and you're thinking, look, we've got to push on now this season. Unfortunately, the transfer window was a massive disappointment for me, and it shows that the club are not serious for challenging for anything this season. Solanke was the only kind of first team player that was going to start in this team, and then what we've seen this season so far is the same stuff. Ange is not learning, he's not adapting, he's not changing his tactics. Where our away record is absolutely shocking, and we all know that the stats and the data out there. We're underperforming massively, and if you look over the last 12 months, we'd only be 11th in the league points wise. So look, I'm not happy. A lot I put down to that transfer window. Ange has accepted that transfer window. He said he was happy with it. I'm not sure what's going on there. And you see us week in, week out, very inconsistent. Win 1 week, lose the next. Yes, we're still in the cups, but I just don't have any confidence in Ange, and I think time is running out for him. So yeah, do I think he'll be successful? Unfortunately not. So yeah, that's my take on Ange so far. Big up, guys. Speak to you all later. Take care.
Big up Marlon at Spurs Kings TV. It's Kate from The Perfect Match, giving my short video on your question of how I feel Ange Postecoglou has done so far in the Spurs job. Obviously, he came in 10 games unbeaten. The levels were set up here. And since then, I think it's fair to say it's been like a roller coaster. 1 minute we're up, 1 minute we're down. I have mixed feelings about Ange. I really wanted to succeed. I like the style of play when it's played properly, but at the same time, I've got my concerns that we're, first of all, very predictable to play against. Second of all, that the two inverted fullbacks don't work. And third of all, that we're so easy to, opposition teams can just cut through us like butter because of the high line. So I feel I've got mixed views about Ange, but I think what concerns me the most is that game against Ipswich. There was just nothing there. Players weren't tackling, they weren't even taking on their man, and it struck me that he may have lost the dressing room. For the first time, I thought these players ain't playing for him, because yeah, it was so lacklustre. And once a manager loses the dressing room, we all know it's not normally too far away before they get the sack. But as I say, if he goes, I won't lose any sleep and shed any tears. If he stays, then I will be behind him 100%, hope he can turn it round. But if I had to give him a rating out of 10, I would probably give him a 5, because half the time we're up and half the time we're down. I just don't like the fact that the fan base is so divisive. I get it, but it's just unfortunate that we can't all come to the same sort of conclusion. But I think sometimes I look at our team and a better manager would probably get better results. For instance, I hate to be the one who looks backwards, but I look at Poch and I think he could get so much more out of this team than Ange Postecoglou. So I think a fair 5, kind of sitting on the fence, and a bit of an airy-fairy response, but that is what I would give him. But make sure everyone likes this video and subscribes to Spurs Kings TV, and if you want to see more of me and Jimbo, then come over to The Perfect Match. Come on, you Spurs!
Hey everyone, this is Harry from Spurs TV doing a video for Spurs Kings TV. Of course, you guys might know my face because I've been on the channel loads of times, and obviously most of last season. Ironically, talk a lot about Ange, but Marlon asked me to do my own take on Ange in a few minutes about what I think of him, and whether he's a success at Tottenham, whether I think he'll be a success at Tottenham, and also about his time at Tottenham so far. So let's get straight into it. So first of all, I think for me, Ange has done a 6 out of 10 job, if I'm being honest, like a bang average job. And I say this because we are consistently inconsistent. Apart from the 10-game honeymoon period in the first, last season, it's been pretty bad. We've won some games, we've lost some games. For me, I'm not seeing any sort of like structure really, in terms of, we all know what style he's going to play, which is probably part of the problem with the inverted fullbacks nonsense, which I'm not a big fan of. Plus, we also invert the wingers, which is very strange. And also just the pressing, which is kind of normal in modern day football. And also just the use of the fact we play pretty much 2 at the back with no number 6. And Vakari is a bit... So, his tenure at Tottenham, like I said, 6 out of 10, bang average. Get us back into Europe. Some might say that was an achievement. But I'm going to give a different take on this. We were 4th after 10 in the top 4, sorry, after 10 games, and on average, like 90-something%, I think it's 97%, something like this, of teams that are top after the first 10 games finishing in the top 4. Now we fall into the 4 or 5% or whatever it is, which is, to be honest, for someone who's lauded as like an incredible manager, that is really, really bad. And I don't know how people sit in and defend him. Do I think he'll be a success at Tottenham? Well, yes and no. Yes, because as long as he keeps fans entertained, which apparently is the remit, if you believe what comes out of his mouth and Levy's mouth and unfortunately a lot of our fan base, then he will be a success Spurs. People will label him as a success because he just kicks the ball forward, which ironically, if you watch him on the bench, is the only thing he seems to say to the players, which is why I don't rate him. On top of that, I don't think he was a success at Spurs because for all his talk, as I always say, actions speak louder than words. He will not be a success at Tottenham. He will not win anything at Tottenham. And I'll be surprised if he is after Christmas, because obviously after the international break, we've got a lot of tough games. And yeah, obviously before I end this video, Ange out.
Good afternoon, Marlon. Jose here from El Tel Cockerel. You've asked me to do a video for you with what I think of Ange's tenure and should we stick with him, I think is what you've asked the question of. Right, let me go from the start. Okay. Right, Ange divides opinions throughout the fan base. We're all aware of this. I go back to Ange was hired by the club, and when he was hired by the club, there would have been an agreement, there would have been deliverables from Ange, and there would have been milestones put in place, you know, for them deliverables and what the club wanted to see going forward. They don't share this, unfortunately, with all the Spurs fan base, so we're unaware of what is a contract that's binding between 2 parties and what entails in that contract, and then what deliverables and what milestones are put in there. If I look back at the last 2 decades or just over, we've got the same rinse and repeat cycle, and it needs to be broken. In my eyes, it needs to be broken. So for me, Ange was given a 4-year contract, and in 4 years there are deliverables along that way that I don't know, and there's agreements with the board on what we're doing going forward. Now, it's funny because people call it projects, people call it rebuilds, people call it whatever. Where are we rebuilding from? Where's the project coming from? But when all the managers that come to our club come to manage, and they have to change different ethoses because they've got different playing styles, they then get rid of players, bring other players in. So really, in essence, every manager I've had has tried to put their own stamp, and when you put your own stamp, you could call that a project. It's quite comfortable. You can call it a project for you know, that happens. So we've gone and got rid of a load of players. We've brought in a load of new players. Yes, the squad was light at the end of the last season. I've said this. Many other people have said it. And if you didn't say it, then you can see it. It's quite clear and evident to us. Everybody said, you know, you look at other teams, but now we're talking about Ange, but you look at other teams, and other teams have built and have had rocky patches and a rocky road to build what they've ended up building. Why is Ange no different? In my eyes, why is Ange no different? People see what they want to see. People have preconceived ideas of the manager as well. And, you know, people have foundations of where they support Tottenham and what their foundations are and what their thought process is beyond them foundations. To me, it's rocky. We're not winning enough for my liking, but I understand that there's going to be ups and downs. And by rinsing and repeating and doing exactly what we've done, we're just going to go back to the start again, and we regress every time we do this. We always regress. So for me, I think Ange should be given the time to build a squad that he wants to build. Because people will say, yeah, but he's got the players he wants to buy. Listen, Ange doesn't pick the players. Ange says, this is the type of player I'm after, and Johan Langer goes out, and the scouts go out, and they find these players that fit the attributes and the skill sets that Ange is looking for. So when you go out for players, and you say these are the type of players that you're looking for, you could come back with 15 players that fit the mould. Then Langer may only put 3 in front of you, and one could be player A, one could be Mickey Mouse, and one could be Donald Duck. If you're only giving them 3 players, who's Ange going to go for? He's going to go for player A. He's not going to go for the other 2, is he? And when he does that, he's doing that because that's what he's given. So when he says that, yeah, he's my player, or yeah, I okayed that player, he's okayed the player from a possible 2 or 3 that he's been given, and he picks the best of what he thinks is right. There's a lot that needs to change, and at the end of the day, it's all right. This talent ID and the talent spotting and stuff like that. Listen, finding all the gems and that went years ago. It's so hard to find a gem now. Now you go by what you go because everyone's doing it. Should I say everyone's doing this? It's harder to find a gem, so you're gonna have to pay for players. And some players you pay for youngsters, and you pay a lot more than what you would have done yesteryear. So for me, yeah, although there's ups and downs in the games and that, and I feel agonised when we lose, and like any other fan should do. I feel agonised when we lose, but the thing that I will say is that I believe that we should give him a chance to build, to create and build whatever it is that we've got going forward in the future. And if he comes to the end of his tenure in 4 years' time and he hasn't built it and we can't see what he's done, then let him go then. But for me, I'm all for Ange now.
I hope you enjoyed everyone's views on Ange Postecoglou. As you can tell, up and down, some people in love, some people not in love. However, it's time for us to answer that question. How do I rate Ange's tenure so far? So for me, I would probably say it's 50-50. Yeah, there's been some parts that I've not been happy with, but there are some parts I've been happy with. At the end of the day, this is a man that's come into the club he lost Harry Kane straight away. That was the first major out. He's got an aged son, but however, some of those people that he's brought in has been okay. Some of them have been a bit hit and miss, but I'm one of those. Half of them I think are club signings that he's just been happy to take on. However, I don't think he's really improved anybody so far, apart from probably Sarr is probably the only person I say in the whole squad he's proper improved. However, I'm going to give him, I say that his tenure so far has probably been as successful as what the club have made it for him. And that's why I'm not one of those that are against him right now. I know the results have been up and down, but I don't think the club have given him the tools, especially with the way he wants to play, to go and produce the results, the consistent results, because these results have been happening before Ange turned up. And it's about changing the culture and the mindset of the club. So hopefully, look, at the present moment, yeah, I'm not completely happy, but I'm happy enough with the job he has done so far. Ash?
Yeah, I have to agree, to be fair, because if you look back where we were under Ryan Mason and Stellini, it was an absolute car crash, bro. I'll be real with you, man. And we didn't know if we were attacking or defending type of football style. And the fan base was completely divided at the time. So if you actually deep it, if you actually run it back, what he had to do was change the culture, as you've already said, Marlon. He's had to change the tactics, the style of play, and the philosophy, and he's had to manage some old characters in the first season and some new ones, and Bediman, and he still managed to get 5th despite finishing quite poorly. I felt.
Yeah.
I think that was the biggest critique for most fans, that he started so well and he ended really poorly. So if it was the other way around, I think a lot more fans would be on board. But that's where some of our doubts come into mind, if we're being honest. Second season, there's a lot more pressure for him to produce, because in real time, you don't get that much time in football. It's a results-based business, and people are comparing what other managers are doing to what we're doing, which is unfair, I think, in my opinion. If we look at Aston Villa, their culture, their ownership, the players they have are completely different, in my opinion, to what Spurs have. And so are Liverpool. If you look at Arne Slot, completely different manager, different ownership again, different, I'd say, X factor players. Players that can change games. And I just look at Spurs and I'm like, who's a guy that can change the game with the drop of a hat? I'm not too sure we have many of those players, if any, if I'm being totally honest. But yeah, that's how I see it so far. Second season's been up and down, and he has to get it right. So it's been a 50-50 for me as well, up and down. He's done some good. I do have enjoyed some of the games that we played, really attacking, attractive football at times. And I actually think we look better when we have less possession. I don't know if it's just me. I kind of like us when we're like fast transitional, But yeah, that's how I feel about it.
Now, the next question, obviously, I asked all the YouTubers, and this one was probably going to be the one that got everyone. Is he going to be successful at Spurs? Depends how we measure success. If we're measuring it by trophies, unfortunately for me, I don't think he'll win a trophy. And it's not down to Ange. It won't be nothing that Ange has done. Ange will do the best job that he's able to do, but he'll only be able to do it on the tools he's given, as I said earlier. And unfortunately for us right now, the head of the company right now is not into trophies. We know it. We've seen it. So for Ange right now, it's down to him on what way he wants to go. Whether I think he'll be successful, I think he will set the next manager up for not where we were when he came in. And I think he'll set us up in a good way. Look, he'll change the culture. He'll try and change everything. It's just whether the people above him wanted to go on this journey with him. They haven't gone on the journey with anyone else. So we'll have to wait and see. But whether he'll be successful is in trophy-wise, I don't think so. I just don't think that is ENIC's way. But whether he's be successful in other parts of what he's trying to do, I think he will be. I think he will be successful. Ash?
Yeah, no, I second that, bro. Because I'm looking at the actual squad and the players that he has at his disposal for an attacking team. And I spoke about X factors before. In the final third, I think Spurs have had the second most shots in the league. Now, some people might say, is it shots inside the box, outside the box, etc., etc. The point is, we've improved dramatically, and I know people don't like underlying stats, but a lot of them are in the right places. But if you don't have the correct players, in my opinion, to finish off that job, then we're always going to be up and down, because I think that's the difference between your mid-table teams and your teams that get jobs done. Because sometimes you need to win it ugly. Like, I think a lot of people were upset for the last, few games where we kind of dithered and hivered against Palace being one, Ipswich being another, Galatasaray. People aren't happy with it. And I think in terms of squad depth, we just don't have different profiles, attacking profiles in those areas where we can change the game, not just through tactics, but just through skill sets of players. Can they do something different? And I think that's my biggest frustration. You need to give an attacking manager, attacking players. And if you're going for a defensive manager, you need to give a defensive manager defensive players. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Yeah. So it's always like, oh, my light's gone there. It's always one or the other. Always one or the other. But yeah, man. I hand it back to you, Marlon. My light's gone.
Everybody, thank you for tuning in. And I want to just throw this out. A big thank you to Wilsey, who has put this together for us. Absolute legend. Please make sure you go follow him on X. He's also on Scarfy Spurs Talks on a weekly basis, and we will get him on the channel. Look, we'll try and do another one of these in March on the next international break. But if anybody wants to take part, please email us at spurskingstv@outlook.com, and we want to get every fan involved in the next video in March. As me and Ash still believe Ange will still be here, and we can do his tenure from there as well. But as they say, please like, subscribe, and comment. And come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.